Okay, so have you ever stopped to think about how a shark gets its energy from the sun? Or how a hawk is somehow connected to a cabbage? I know, it sounds a little weird, but it's all part of this incredible concept in nature, the food chain. So let's dive in and follow this amazing story of energy.
Right. We're going to start by unraveling what I like to call the great chain of eating. You'll see pretty quickly that it connects every single living thing on this planet in a way that's, well, it's surprisingly direct and really powerful.
And that brings us to our first big, kind of strange question. A hawk, is a carnivore, a hunter. A cabbage is a cabbage. They seem to exist in totally different worlds, right? So how on earth does the energy that's locked inside that plant make its way to a top predator like a hawk?
Well, the answer is in the chain itself. It all starts with the cabbage. A hungry caterpillar comes along and munches on it. Then, that caterpillar gets spotted by a sparrow and becomes a quick meal. And finally, that sparrow is hunted by a swift sparrowhawk. And just like that, the energy that started in the cabbage has now fueled the hawk. It's a simple, step-by-step journey.
And that's exactly what a food chain shows us. It's basically a map of how food, and more importantly, energy, flows through an entire ecosystem. It really just perfectly illustrates how every single living thing, big or small, is woven into this delicate web where they all depend on each other for survival.
But where does all this energy actually come from in the first place? To get that, we have to look at the very foundation of every single food chain. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, it always begins with one critical type of organism, the producer.
Producers are basically the engines of the whole ecosystem. They're living things, almost always plants, that literally make their own food. They use sunlight to create chemical energy through photosynthesis. You might hear scientists call them autotrophs, which is just a fancy way of saying self-feeders. They are the ultimate source of all new energy.
And you find them everywhere. We're talking vast fields of wheat on land, or tiny phytoplankton and huge kelp forests in the ocean. No matter the habitat, producers are that essential first link. Without them, there's no energy for the chain to even start. Simple as that.
Okay, so if producers make the energy, then who uses it? That brings us to the next link, or, a whole series of links in the chain, the consumers.
So, a consumer is any living thing that can't make its own food. To get the energy it needs to live, it has to eat or consume other living things. The scientific term here is heterotrophs. They rely on others for their food. And this group includes pretty much everything from a tiny insect all the way up to a massive blue whale.
Let's look at a simple example from the rainforest. Here, the banana plant is our producer. The monkey who eats the banana is a consumer. And then the jaguar who might hunt the monkey is also a consumer, just one step higher up the chain. See how that works? It's a logical flow.
Now this is a really, really important detail. Look at the arrows. It's easy to think the arrow points to what an animal eats, but it's the other way around. The arrow always means is eaten by, and it shows you the exact path the energy is taking as it moves up the chain.
And these chains can get pretty long. In the ocean, for example, seaweed, our producer, gets eaten by shrimp. The shrimp is then eaten by a seahorse, and that seahorse might become a meal for a shark. But what's really wild is that at each step, about 90% of the energy is lost. So that shark at the end of a 4-step journey is only getting a tiny fraction of the seaweed's original power.
So we've seen examples on land and in the sea, but this whole idea is totally universal. Food chains are like the basic operating system for every single habitat on Earth. To really see what I mean, let's take a quick trip around the globe.
First stop, the freezing Arctic. You've got polar bears, seals, fish, shrimp. So think about it for a second. Where does this chain even begin? What's the producer here? Well, it's the algae and phytoplankton living under the ice. From there, the energy flows up, link by link, all the way to that polar bear at the very top.
Okay, now let's dive into a vibrant coral reef. This is where things get really cool, because you're not just looking for one chain, but a whole web of them. You could trace dozens of different paths. Like a parrotfish eats algae off the coral, and then it might get eaten by a moray eel. Can you spot another path?
And back in the rainforest, it is an absolute tangled web of connections. You might have an eagle at the top, but what does it eat? Maybe a snake. And what did the snake eat? Maybe a frog that ate an insect that ate a leaf. The flow of energy here is just unbelievably complex, with countless paths overlapping from the forest floor all the way up to the canopy. And finally, the desert. You might think it's empty, but even in this super harsh landscape, life is locked in that exact same intricate dance for survival. From the Arctic to the reef to the desert, it just proves that the food chain isn't some simple diagram. It's the universal principle of life itself.
But here's the thing. This beautiful, interconnected system is also incredibly fragile. And that brings us to maybe the most important part of this whole explainer. What happens when a link in that chain breaks?
Think back to our cabbage and hawk. What if a disease completely wiped out all the sparrows? Or maybe a new pesticide killed off all the caterpillars? What happens then?
Well, it creates a domino effect. It's the perfect analogy. If the sparrows disappear, the sparrowhawks lose a major food source, and their population could totally crash. At the same time, without the sparrows, the caterpillar population might explode, and they could destroy all the cabbages. Removing just one piece sends shockwaves up and down the entire chain.
This quote really says it all. This is the core idea that makes understanding food chains so important. It's not just a list of who eats what, it's a blueprint for a deep, fundamental interdependence where every single link, no matter how small you think it is, truly matters.
So, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. What do you need to remember? First, food chains are all about mapping how energy flows. Second, that flow always starts with a producer. Third, consumers get their energy by eating other living things. And finally, and this is the big one, every single link in that chain is absolutely vital. Break one, and the whole system could be in trouble.
And that leaves us with one final thought. This stuff isn't just a concept in a science textbook. It's a living, breathing system that's happening right now all around you. So take a second, look out your window. From the grass to the insects to the birds in the sky, what food chains can you see in action?